Have you ever found yourself waiting for tomorrow? Waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect mood, the perfect opportunity, believing that life will finally begin when everything aligns? That was Kabir. For as long as he could remember, his days were filled with delay and indecision, moments slipping through his fingers while he told himself, "I'll start tomorrow." The alarm clock buzzed, yet he hit snooze again, burying himself under blankets as sunlight crept through the curtains. His phone glowed with notifications, each one a small reminder of the life passing him by. And still, he scrolled aimlessly, trapped in a cycle of distraction and delay. His room was a reflection of his mind, cluttered, chaotic, and unmoved. And as the day began without him, he whispered to himself, "I'll do it later. I'll start tomorrow." Tomorrow never came, not like he imagined. Years had passed, and the dreams he once held tightly had faded into the background of his mind, unnoticed, unlived. The potential that had once felt limitless now seemed like a distant echo, drowned in a sea of procrastination and excuses. Kabir's story is not unique. Perhaps you see yourself in him. Perhaps somewhere deep inside, you've also been waiting for a moment that never arrives. But today, we will follow Kabir as he discovers the secret that transforms waiting into doing, hesitation into progress, and small daily habits into a life worth living. This is the story of how Kabir stopped waiting for tomorrow. Kabir's mornings were predictable in their sameness. He would wake late, sluggish and unwilling, convinced that he still had time to catch up. Each day began with a promise he rarely kept, a promise to himself to finally start, to finally act, to finally live. But by the time he lifted his head from the pillow, the hours had already passed. The tasks he wanted to complete piled up like invisible mountains. Laundry undone, dishes in the sink, emails unanswered, books untouched, dreams ignored. And with every passing hour, the weight of inaction grew heavier, pressing down on him until it became almost unbearable. Yet still, he did nothing. The world outside moved on. People achieved, learned, created, and grew. Yet Kabir remained frozen, trapped in a loop of delay, endlessly postponing action while convincing himself that tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, he would think, I will start my writing. Tomorrow, I will get serious about my work. Tomorrow, I will become the person I want to be. But tomorrow never came. And so the days bled into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. His dreams did not vanish. They were buried under layers of excuses and delay. And with each passing day, Kabir's frustration grew, though he rarely admitted it, even to himself. He felt the sting of wasted time, the quiet humiliation of knowing that he had so much potential, yet continued to stand still. In those moments of quiet reflection, when the world slept and the night pressed in around him, Kabir sometimes caught glimpses of the life he could have had, the accomplishments he could have celebrated, the pride he could have felt. But each glimpse ended the same way, with a whisper of resignation. I'll do it tomorrow. It was not laziness that held him back. It was the invisible enemy of delay, the silent thief of time, the false comfort of thinking that one day, somehow, life would begin. And in this first chapter of his story, Kabir had yet to discover that tomorrow is a promise that waits for no one. But everything was about to change. Once, Kabir had dreams. Bright, vivid dreams that filled his mind with possibility. and his heart with hope. He remembered the days when he would stay up late, sketching, writing, learning, imagining a future where he had accomplished something meaningful, something that made him proud. He had a spark, a sense of purpose, a drive that made him feel alive. But life, as it often does, did not pause. Responsibilities, distractions, and the allure of comfort crept in slowly, almost imperceptibly. Small delays turned into habits. Missed mornings turned into missed weeks. Kabir told himself that he would make up for it later, that the spark would reignite when the moment was right. And yet, the moment never came. The notebooks he once filled with ideas sat untouched. Sketches faded under dust. The words he had wanted to write remained locked in his mind. Friends pursued their paths. Teachers congratulated achievers. Opportunities passed by. And Kabir stayed behind, watching silently, wishing silently, yet acting never. His dreams did not vanish, not entirely. They lingered like shadows, reminders of who he could have been. But they were dimmed by the weight of inaction, softened by excuses, and buried beneath the constant mantra of tomorrow. The boy who once imagined greatness had become a spectator of his own life, waiting for the right day to start, never realizing that the right day is the one you choose to act today. Kabir felt the quiet ache of loss, though he rarely admitted it. He couldn't name the exact moment he started to drift, but he knew it had happened. Somewhere between desire and delay, between hope and hesitation, his dreams had receded. And yet, even in the quietest corners of his mind, a tiny voice whispered, "I could still be someone, if only I start."
Life has a way of demanding attention when waiting is no longer an option. For Kabir, the wake-up call arrived abruptly, without warning, and it carried the weight of years lost. It was an opportunity he had longed for, a chance to prove himself, to take the first step toward his dreams. Perhaps it was a project, an interview, a submission, or a moment that could have changed everything. But Kabir, as he often did, delayed. He told himself he would prepare later. He would focus tomorrow. He would seize the moment when he was ready. And when the moment came, he was not ready. The rejection was not dramatic. It was quiet, almost clinical. A missed deadline, a lost chance, a door that closed silently. Yet the impact was profound. Kabir felt it deep in his chest, a mixture of shame, frustration, and disbelief. This was not just a lost opportunity. It was a reflection of years of waiting and postponing. He sat alone that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every excuse he had ever made, every morning he had wasted, every promise to himself that he had broken. "I can't keep living like this," he whispered into the darkness. For the first time, the weight of his procrastination pressed against him with undeniable force. And in that quiet, painful moment, Kabir realized something crucial. He could no longer wait. Tomorrow was a lie. Waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect motivation had left him standing still while life moved forward. If he wanted change, he would have to begin today, not tomorrow, not next week, not when the time feels right. This realization was frightening. It demanded courage, effort, and consistency. But buried beneath fear was a spark, faint but undeniable. It was the spark of possibility, the first tiny ember of change. Kabir had glimpsed it before in his dreams, but now it was real, a light breaking through the shadows of delay. And for the first time in years, he felt a flicker of determination, a whisper that said, "If I don't start now, I may never start at all." That night, Kabir did not yet know the path ahead, but he knew something fundamental. His life could no longer be lived waiting for tomorrow. He had to choose today.
Kabir sat alone in the dim glow of his room, the night pressing in around him, heavy with silence. For years, the nights had been a place of comfort and escape, where he could hide from responsibility and delay the inevitable by telling himself, "Tomorrow, I'll start." But tonight felt different. There was no comfort in hiding, no solace in delay. The weight of every opportunity he had squandered bore down on him, and for the first time it was undeniable. Waiting was no longer an option. He remembered the words of an old friend, a mentor who had once tried to guide him. "You don't need to take a giant leap, Kabir. You don't need to transform your entire life overnight. Start small. Start now. One tiny habit repeated every day is more powerful than 1,000 empty promises to yourself." Kabir's mind wrestled with skepticism. How could something so small, so seemingly insignificant, change the course of his life? And yet, a spark ignited within him, a faint but persistent ember that whispered, "It is worth trying. It is better than standing still." He pulled out a notebook that had long been abandoned, its pages filled with dreams and unfinished thoughts. For the first time in years, he put pen to paper not to imagine what he wanted, but to plan what he could do today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. He wrote down small actions he could take, tiny steps that seemed almost laughable in their simplicity. Wake up 30 minutes earlier. Write 50 words. Read one page. Organize one corner of his room. These were not monumental tasks, but they were something. And more than that, they were achievable. The first habit, he decided, would be waking up earlier. The idea seemed deceptively simple, but he knew it would be a battle against every instinct that had kept him lazy and complacent. The second habit would be writing, even if only a few lines, to remind himself that progress, however small, was possible. The third would be reflection, a nightly acknowledgement of what he had accomplished and what he could do better tomorrow. As he wrote, Kabir felt a sense of agency returning, like sunlight breaking through the clouds after a long storm. For years, he had allowed life to happen to him. Now, for the first time, he was choosing to happen to life. That night, he did not sleep immediately. He lay awake considering the path ahead, the challenges that would inevitably come. Doubt and fear crept in, whispering that he would fail, that he had failed too many times to start again. But buried beneath the fear was determination, fragile yet undeniable, whispering back, "I will start. Even if it's small, even if it's imperfect, I will start." And in that moment, Kabir chose. He chose today, not tomorrow, not the perfect day, not the ideal conditions, today. And though he could not see the entire road ahead, he understood something profound. Transformation begins with a single deliberate step. The next morning, Kabir woke with a nervous energy he had not felt in years. The alarm clock rang, and instead of hitting snooze, he stretched, took a deep breath, and rose from his bed. It was a small action, almost trivial, yet it felt monumental. It was the first act of defiance against the years of delay and inaction that had held him captive. He started with the smallest of habits, aware that trying to overhaul his entire life at once would only lead to disappointment and relapse. He made his bed, a simple gesture of order and intention. Then he wrote 50 words, a modest start, yet enough to remind himself that action was possible, that he could move forward, that he could show up for himself. As days passed, these small actions began to accumulate. Waking earlier gave him quiet hours, moments of clarity before the noise of the world intruded. Writing became a ritual,
a space where he could explore ideas, document thoughts, and measure progress. Reflection at night, though sometimes uncomfortable, allowed him to acknowledge small wins and identify areas for improvement. But the path was not without struggle. There were mornings when the warmth of his bed tempted him back into old habits. There were days when writing felt forced, when reflection felt heavy with guilt. Yet each time he persisted, the act itself became easier, less a battle against inertia and more a natural part of his routine. The habits were forming silently, invisibly, embedding themselves into his identity. He began to notice subtle changes. His mind felt clearer, less burdened by indecision. Tasks that once seemed overwhelming became manageable. Energy returned, not in bursts, but in a steady, sustainable rhythm. The tiny seeds he planted each day were beginning to grow, reaching towards something larger than he had imagined. More than the tangible progress, there was an internal shift. Kabir began to see himself not as a man trapped by procrastination, but as someone capable of discipline and consistency. The power of small daily actions became evident. The simplicity of the habits masked their profound impact. One morning he realized he had written every day for a week without skipping, and that small streak gave him more pride than any grand unfinished project ever had. The true lesson of this phase was not the immediate results, but the transformation occurring quietly beneath the surface. Kabir's identity was slowly aligning with his actions. Where once he had been someone who waited, he was becoming someone who acted. Where once he had been defined by delay, he was beginning to define himself through consistency. And though the journey had just begun, Kabir understood something vital. Greatness does not arrive in sudden leaps. It grows quietly, invisibly, in the repetition of small, deliberate actions. It is built not in extraordinary moments, but in the ordinary decisions repeated over time. He could not yet see the end of the road, nor could he imagine the full magnitude of change awaiting him. But for the first time in years, he felt a quiet certainty. He was moving, he was building, and he was finally awake. Even with small habits in place, Kabir soon discovered that change was never simple, never clean. The first few days of progress had felt exhilarating, almost magical, as if waking earlier and writing a few lines could shift the course of his life. But soon, reality reminded him that transformation was not a straight line. Some mornings, the warmth of his bed was too tempting. He would wake to the alarm, promising himself he would rise, but the sheets felt heavier than ever. On other days, his mind resisted the act of writing, or reflection seemed like a burden rather than a tool. Progress that had felt effortless now came with resistance. Doubt began to creep in. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'm destined to fail again. Perhaps this isn't for me, he thought, each thought a weight pressing down on his chest. For years, he had believed in tomorrow, in an endless series of postponements. Now, as he faced the discomfort of doing, fear of failing and returning to old habits surged like a storm. Yet, in the midst of struggle, Kabir began to notice something subtle. Every time he chose to act despite doubt, the act itself built resilience. Waking one day after oversleeping, he still made time for writing. Skipping a morning, he returned in the afternoon to complete his tasks. Each choice to continue, no matter how small, reinforced a new identity, a person who shows up. This was the ugly middle of change, the part that most people abandon. It is not exciting, it is not glamorous, it is uncomfortable, tedious, and relentless. But it is here, in these repeated ordinary battles against inertia, that transformation is forged. Kabir learned to embrace imperfection. A missed day was not failure, it was a lesson.
A struggle was not a sign of weakness, it was a measure of growth. Slowly, he began to understand that consistency was built not by never faltering, but by always returning. And as weeks passed, he realized that each small victory, even in the face of resistance, was a quiet defiance against the person he had been. Each act of persistence chipped away at the habits that had bound him for years, and in their place, something new was taking shape, something stronger, steadier, alive.
The true power of Kabir's daily habits revealed itself not in a single dramatic breakthrough, but in countless tiny victories that accumulated quietly, almost imperceptibly. The first completed chapter, the first uninterrupted streak of writing, the first morning he woke with the alarm and immediately acted, each of these small wins whispered a message he had long ignored. You can do this. As the days turned into weeks, Kabir began to notice the subtle shifts in himself. His mornings, once sluggish and burdened by hesitation, became moments of clarity and purpose. The act of writing a few lines each day expanded into entire pages. The quiet reflection at night turned into insights about himself, his dreams, and his potential. The invisible enemy of delay was slowly losing its grip. Even his environment began to respond. His room, once cluttered and chaotic, reflected the change in his mind. One corner organized here, a desk cleared there, each physical adjustment mirrored the internal order he was cultivating. Every small act of discipline reinforced the others, like gears in a machine finally turning together. More importantly, Kabir began to feel something he had not felt in years: confidence. Not arrogance, not fleeting excitement, but steady, quiet confidence, born from knowing he had chosen to act again and again, even when it was difficult. He realized that transformation was not about giant leaps. It was about showing up for yourself consistently, even when no one is watching, even when the results are not immediately visible. Others began to notice as well. Friends and family remarked on subtle changes in his energy, his demeanor, his presence. "You've changed," they said, though they could not articulate why. And Kabir realized that this was the natural effect of compounded small wins. What starts internally inevitably begins to ripple outward. The streaks of habit, once small and almost invisible, were now creating momentum. One completed task led to another. One day of persistence built into a week, one week into a month. And with each passing day, the person Kabir had longed to become, the person who had once been lost in procrastination, grew clearer, stronger, and more tangible. By now, Kabir had understood the secret that most people overlook. Success is rarely born from a single monumental effort. It grows silently, patiently, invisibly, through the repetition of small, deliberate actions. Each habit is a brick, and each day another layer is added, building a foundation that cannot be shaken by fear, doubt, or setback. And so, in this phase of his journey, Kabir's life was no longer defined by delay. It was defined by persistence, by tiny victories, by the unwavering choice to act, to show up, and to begin again no matter what. The momentum had begun, and for the first time in years, Kabir could sense that his life was moving forward, steadily, patiently, undeniably, towards something greater than he had ever imagined. By now, Kabir had spent weeks, then months, cultivating small habits that once seemed almost trivial. The simple acts of waking early, writing, reflecting, and organizing had become more than routines. They had begun to define who he was. For the first time, he realized that habits were not merely actions, but the building blocks of identity. Where once he had seen himself as someone who procrastinated, who waited endlessly for the perfect moment, he now recognized a different truth. He was a person who showed up, a person who acted, even when it was uncomfortable, a person who could rely on himself, even when the world offered no external validation. This shift was subtle, almost invisible to those around him, yet internally it was profound. Each morning he rose with intention. Each line of writing completed, each task checked off his list was a quiet declaration: I am not the person I was yesterday. I am becoming someone new. The world outside had not changed, opportunities had not suddenly multiplied, and life had not become easier. What had changed was him. His perspective, his confidence, his willingness to engage with life fully. Tasks that once seemed daunting were now manageable. Challenges that had paralyzed him were now seen as tests, opportunities to exercise discipline and resilience. Kabir noticed the ripple effect of his consistency. Relationships improved because he was present, attentive, and engaged. His energy and focus increased, enabling him to tackle projects he had long postponed. His mind, once clouded by indecision and self-doubt, became clear, steady, and purposeful. He understood now that identity was not built in moments of inspiration, but in the quiet, repeated choices that define every day. Every act of consistency reinforced the person he was becoming, and every lapse was simply a reminder to return, stronger and more aware. The boy who once waited for tomorrow was gone. In his place stood a man quietly, persistently building himself one habit at a time. He could feel it. He was no longer acting against himself, he was aligned with who he was becoming. And that alignment, subtle yet undeniable, gave him a sense of power and peace he had never known before.
Months of small, deliberate actions had begun to bear fruit. The quiet, consistent efforts that Kabir had once doubted were now visible in tangible ways. One day, an opportunity arose, one he had longed for, one that would have seemed impossible back when he was trapped in procrastination. Perhaps it was the project he had been dreaming to submit, a job he had been too hesitant to pursue, or a skill he had honed quietly over time. Whatever the moment, Kabir was ready. Unlike the past, when he had faltered and delayed, now he approached it with calm confidence, equipped with preparation, discipline, and the steady habits that had become part of his identity. He acted decisively. He showed up fully. He gave his best, not because the world demanded it, but because he had trained himself to do so every single day. The result was not instant fame or overnight success, but it was meaningful, undeniable progress. The opportunity responded to his persistence, rewarding not a single moment of brilliance, but months of quiet, consistent effort. When the news came, the project accepted, the recognition received, the breakthrough achieved, Kabir did not leap with disbelief. He smiled quietly, a smile of recognition, of understanding. This was the fruit of his labor. This was the result of showing up day after day, of believing in the power of small habits when the outcome was invisible, when no one was watching, when it seemed almost insignificant. For the first time, Kabir felt the profound connection between effort and outcome. He realized that life does not reward procrastination or wishful thinking. It rewards action. It rewards persistence. It rewards those who commit consistently, even in the small moments that feel inconsequential. He looked around him at his organized space, his journal filled with progress, his clear mind and steady hands, and he felt a quiet, deep satisfaction. Not just at the success he had achieved, but at the journey itself, the growth, the discipline, the identity he had forged. Kabir understood now that this was just the beginning. The breakthrough, while significant, was not the pinnacle. It was proof that his choices, his habits, his consistency had created change.
And with that understanding came confidence, humility, and the unshakable knowledge that every small action, repeated faithfully, had the power to shape the life he had once only dreamed of.
By now, Kabir's life had transformed in ways he could scarcely have imagined when he first chose to act. The habits he had once struggled to maintain, waking early, writing, reflecting, organizing, had become second nature, woven into the fabric of his daily existence. They were no longer just actions, they were extensions of who he had become. Success, he realized, was not a sudden, blinding moment of triumph. It was not a lightning bolt that struck once and changed everything. It was quiet, gradual, cumulative. It was built brick by brick, day by day, through repetition and consistency. The small victories he had once overlooked, the completion of a task, the dedication to a routine, the resilience to try again after a setback, had accumulated into momentum that could not be stopped. Kabir looked back on the man he had been, the one who waited endlessly for tomorrow, who let dreams fade under the weight of procrastination, who felt powerless and trapped, and he felt a mixture of empathy and disbelief. How long he had wasted, how many opportunities had slipped through his fingers, how much potential had gone unfulfilled simply because he had not started. But regret did not dominate him. Instead, there was understanding and, above all, empowerment. He knew now that waiting was the enemy, but action, no matter how small, was transformative. He saw that greatness was not reserved for the few who struck suddenly or lived extraordinary circumstances. It was available to anyone who chose to commit to the small, deliberate steps that form habits day in and day out. The habits had compounded. Writing had turned into completed projects. Early mornings had become productive routines. Reflection had given clarity, and clarity had guided decisions. Kabir was no longer chasing his dreams, he was living them in the only way that truly mattered: consistently, patiently, intentionally. He realized that the power he had been seeking outside himself had always existed within. It had been waiting in the quiet moments, in the repeated choices, in the courage to rise each day and take action, no matter how insignificant it seemed. And that realization brought peace. Kabir had learned the ultimate truth about life, effort, and growth. It is not the dramatic leaps that define our lives, but the small steps repeated faithfully over time. And in those small steps, he had discovered the extraordinary.
Kabir's story is not unique. His journey is the journey of every person who has ever waited for the perfect moment, who has postponed their dreams, who has told themselves, "I'll start tomorrow." The difference between those who remain waiting and those who succeed lies not in talent, luck, or circumstance. It lies in action. Today, the question is no longer, can I do it? The question is, will I start today? Because tomorrow is uncertain, fleeting, and often never arrives. But today is real. Today is a choice. Today is the moment you can begin building the habits, the consistency, the identity that will shape the life you want. Start small. Write one line. Take one step. Make one choice. Do not wait for motivation, inspiration, or perfection. Start now and repeat tomorrow and the next day and the next. Compounded over time, these small actions will become unstoppable momentum. Kabir did not wait. He chose today. And today, he is the person he once dreamed of becoming. And you too can choose. You too can act. Your life will not change tomorrow. It will change today with one small habit, one deliberate action, one decision to show up for yourself. The power to transform your life is not in the future. It is in the choices you make right now. So take the first step. Start today. Stop waiting for tomorrow. Your journey begins the moment you choose to act.